I'm going to be talking about physical activity. And so over the next 15, 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about what physical activity is, why we need to do it. I'm going to introduce you to something new. It's called the 24-hour movement guidelines. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can get moving. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is in some of the slides, I have this little phone icon, click. So feel free to get out your phones, take a picture, because there's some key information that you might want to go home with. Okay, so what is physical activity? So physical activity is really any bodily movement that we do in our day-to-day lives. So it could be work. Do you have a very sedentary type of job, or do you have a very active type of job? It could be stuff we do around the house, so yard work, vacuuming, that sort of thing. Transportation, how are we getting to and from work? Are we sitting in a car for 2 hours commuting? Are we riding our bikes? Are we walking? It's leisure activity, and it's also exercise. So I'm going to do a poll here in person, but also online. And Brenda, you can help manage that. So it's very low tech polling. So I'm going to ask the group here and online, at a minimum, how many minutes a week should adults between the ages of 18 and 64 engage in physical activity in order to gain the health benefits? A, 50 minutes, B, 800 minutes, or C, 150 minutes. So if you think A, put up your hand. Okay, we got one. If you think it's B, put up your hand. And if you think it's C, put up your hand. Oh my goodness. And what about online? C? Oh my God, this is really good. You guys are right. Okay, so the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiologists, they've put out recommendations and guidelines around the ideal amount of physical activity that you should be engaged in on a weekly basis, and it's a minimum of 150 minutes per week, as you guys mentioned. Good job. Do I even need to do my talk? I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so one of the key things about those 150 minutes is that it has to be at a minimum of a moderate intensity of physical activity. So what does that mean? So that could be a brisk walk, it could be bike riding, but essentially if you're engaged in any form of physical activity and you're sweating, but you're able to maintain a conversation, that's most likely a moderate aerobic intensity. If you're engaged in a form of physical activity and you're short of breath, but you're sweating, you can't have that conversation with your friend that you're jogging with, then you're performing at a vigorous aerobic intensity. All right. Now, the other thing that's important about these physical activity guidelines and recommendations is that we should be engaging in some form of strengthening activities at least 2 days per week. So how many in the room are strengthening, purposefully strengthening, using weights, doing appropriate exercises? Looking at you guys over there, yeah? Twice a week, how many? Pretty good, not bad. All right. Okay, so why is it important to do physical activity? So we know that there is a ton of health benefits to be had. There's immediate health benefits. So if you engage in appropriate physical activity, you'll notice change in your sleep. You'll start to feel a little bit better, less anxiety. Your blood pressure will go down, but there's lots of long-term benefits, including mental health benefits, cardiovascular benefits. There's prevention of chronic disease such as cancer. We can maintain a healthy weight. We can also maintain good bone strength, as well as maintain balance and coordination. Now, there's also financial benefits, if you can believe it, to being physically active. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, estimated the global cost of non-communicable, i.e. non-infectious diseases attributed to physical inactivity. So if you think that the annual cost is $3 billion, put up your hand. 15 billion. Feel like I'm auctioning here. Anybody for 15? 15? 27 billion. Okay, and what are the people online saying? 27 billion. Yes, you guys are so smart. $27 billion is the estimated cost of not moving. That's significant. And of course, as was mentioned by the first speaker, Dr. Inman, in terms of treatment guidelines, we know that physical activity, exercise, physiotherapy is the cornerstone of management for axial spondyloarthritis. It is in all the guidelines that we see that are published. And also there is a ton, an absolute ton of research to really prove the benefit of exercise and physical activity. We know that it reduces pain and stiffness. It improves sleep quality in people with axial spondyloarthritis. It can maintain and improve spinal mobility and strength. It was either Dr. Haroon or Dr. Inman mentioned that people with axial spondyloarthritis are at greater risk of cardiovascular disease. So we know that exercise has a huge benefit in that sense. Mental health and well-being, disease activity is reduced, and we improve function and quality of life. So lots of evidence. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but know that it's good for you. The more we move, the better we're going to feel. So what are these 24-hour movement guidelines? So this was recently published just last year, again, through the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiologists. And what it really talks about is movement behaviors. So it doesn't just focus on activity, but it also focuses on balancing the other movement behaviors that we encounter. So sleep as well as sedentary behavior. And so we know from the slide previous, and everybody knows in the room, that we need to be doing at least 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week in order to gain those health benefits. And we should also be engaged in several hours of light physical activities, including standing. And I'm going to get to that standing in a few slides. In terms of sleep, we should be getting about 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep with consistent waking and going to bed times. So how many in the room think that they're getting, say, let's start conservatively, 7 hours of sleep? How many got 7 hours of sleep last night? Come on, you must have. It was daylight savings. Like, didn't we get that extra hour? You got 7 hours? Did anybody get 8? No? What about online? Are we getting any answers online?
Oh, not in the last 40 years.
Not in the last 40 years. How many people think they're getting 6 hours of sleep? So interestingly, we've done a study on this. In our cohort, people reported that their average hour of sleep is 6 hours a night. They're not meeting the mark. So there's some work to be done there. And in terms of sedentary behavior, we should be limiting it to 3 hours of recreational screen time and no more than 8 hours total in a 24-hour period. How many think you're getting more than 8 hours? Sedentary. Okay, all right. So we got lots of work to do, right? And just on that idea of no more than 3 hours of screen time, I'm going to diverge slightly because this is important. Posture is really important, particularly for people with axial spondyloarthritis. Has anybody heard of text neck? Who has text neck? Everybody in the room has text neck, I bet. Okay, so if we think about the human head, it weighs roughly about 12 pounds. And that is like a bowling ball being held with on a stick. Pencil is essentially what it's like. So when we're in good posture with our head up in a normal position, 0 degrees flexion is how we refer to it in physiotherapy, it's about 12 pounds. Most of us, however, when we look at our phone, our neck is bent at 45 degrees, and that 12-pound head now weighs almost 50 pounds. Can you imagine trying to balance a bowling ball on a pencil that's 50 pounds? So that all that stress is going through those little tiny cervical vertebrae. Ooh, they're little tiny guys. And the muscles in your neck are working really, really hard to stabilize. So just imagine that next time you look at your phone. So what is good posture? And again, if you guys have been to this talk before, you all know this. So good posture is axial extension. And that's where the ear bisects the shoulder bisects the hip, and the hip bisects the ankle. Now, Maria might get mad at me because I'm going to move away from the mic. I'm not allowed to do that, but I have to do it, but I think they can still see. Hello? Okay. So Good posture, if you want to do it yourselves at home or wherever, if you just go up against the wall with your heels back and your head back and your shoulders back and just like relax, you don't have to be stiff like a robot. That's going to encourage and optimize that axial extension. All you have to do is just walk away, and we're talking about optimizing, improving. We don't need to necessarily perfect, right? Posture is the foundation of function, and it's the foundation of good exercise. Very often we're like this on our phones as we do and sit and all this sort of stuff. So this starts to feel normal. And so if you do all of a sudden go up, this feels like you're way back here and it feels totally wrong, but it's not wrong. This is right. And so this is what you can do to help encourage that proper axial extension. Okay, and we need to be thinking about posture when we're sitting. So sitting with your buttocks to the back of the chair, feet flat on the floor. Some people like to roll up a soft towel and put it in the small of their back to encourage that good posture in sitting. Standing desks have been a game changer. There's Maria Morales at her standing desk on the right, and we have our radiologist, Dr. David Passalent, here, who uses a standing desk at his work. Keeping your back straight when you're lifting heavy items. And the other thing that I want to mention that I don't think that we've adhered to very well this evening is the 30-minute rule. So every 30 minutes, if you're sitting, all you have to do is stand up. Set that iPhone that's you're bending over a 50-pound head looking at, set it to go off every half hour, and all you have to do is just stand up and then sit back down. It's just breaking up the consistency of that movement that is really important. If you can walk around, go get a drink of water, even better. Okay, so how do we get moving? So there's different schools of thought. This is my philosophy. First of all, you got to make it fun. You want to do something that you enjoy. You want to set goals. I think goal setting is so critical. So we use what's called the SMART acronym. So you want to make sure that they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed goals. So I'm going to give you an example. So say, you're not into exercising much and you want to pick something that you enjoy. So let's take walking. Walking is very simple. Everybody can do it depending on the weather. And say, okay, the goal for me is I'm going to be walking 30 minutes, 3 days a week. Well, actually, it should be 5 days a week if we want to match those targets, right? 5 days a week. And I'm going to do that by the end of the month. And so that's, you've made it specific, you've made it measurable, it's achievable, and it's timed. You say you're going to do it by the end of the month. The other thing I think that it's important is to tell a friend. They can support you, and you're also accountable to that person. You've sort of shared your goals with somebody, and now somebody can kind of say, hey, how's that walking going? Are you meeting your goals? Are you walking 5 days a week? I think one of the biggest challenges is that we need to avoid this boom bust cycle. So this is what happens when, say, 10 years ago, you were jogging and you've decided, okay, I'm going to get active again and I'm going to start jogging. And you go off and you jog 10 kilometers because you're feeling great. Do you think you're going to feel great the next day, the next couple of days? Probably not. You might flare your spondylitis a little bit. You'll probably have some aches and pains just because you're not used to it. And what ends up happening is you then decline in terms of your degree of activity that you engage in. And then you start to feel good again after a little while and you go at it really hard. And so over time, you're getting these cycles of flare, recovery, you do it again, you increase your activity, and over time, you're actually reducing your overall level of activity. So instead, you want to do this very gradually. And so if you think about that walking analogy, where you say, okay, I'm going to be walking 5 days a week, maybe you start off with walking 2 days a week. And instead of half an hour, you're only going to walk 15 minutes. And you say, okay, I'm going to do that for the next week, the next 2 weeks, and I'm going to increase by 15 minutes every week. The key is that you do that no matter how you feel. You stick to the plan. On the days that you're not feeling great, you stick to the plan. On the days that you're feeling really good, you stick to the plan, because that way you don't overdo and you avoid this boom bust cycle. In terms of seeking guidance, so of course there's physiotherapists out there who can help you, particularly ones who are knowledgeable in terms of axial spondyloarthritis. So the Arthritis Rehabilitation and Education Program through the Arthritis Society is very accessible. Their services are covered through the Ministry of Health. Physiotherapy in the province of Ontario is covered through the Ministry of Health if you're over the age of 65 or under the age of 18, or if you're receiving social benefits, or if you've had an inpatient stay. Otherwise, you have to get physiotherapy covered out of pocket. There's other ways to seek guidance in the community. So the City of Toronto has great programs that are available, and I'm sure that whatever municipality you're living at and across the city has, or sorry, across the country has similar municipal programs. The YMCA has great programs, and in Toronto, the Jewish Community Center as well as Variety Village, they have accessible programs that have a sliding scale. So it's based on your individual income, which allows you to access programs. There are lots of online resources, such as the Canadian Spondyloarthritis Association has great instruction in terms of exercise. The Arthritis Society, NAS, which is the equivalent in the UK. You can find good instruction in terms of exercise and how to progress in terms of physical activity on YouTube. And we at the Toronto Western Hospital have developed an e-learning module called We Got Your Back. And it is under construction for its latest edition. Version 2 will be published soon, and that version is going to be available in both English and French. So just before I finish off here, what I wanted to leave you with is sort of the foundation in terms of what you should be doing, the guidelines around the specific forms of exercise. And so the American College of Sports Medicine, they conducted a really thorough literature review of all the different types of exercise out there and came up with recommendations that you should be doing for each of the exercises in terms of obtaining the health benefits from each form of exercise. So I'm going to go, we've talked about cardiorespiratory fitness, which sort of falls under physical activity, but I'm going to go in a little bit more detail around muscle strengthening and flexibility. So in order to gain the benefits of stretching exercises, they should be done daily. If you look at the recommendations from the American College, they actually say 2 to 3 times a week. I would say in a population where stiffness and restricted mobility is part of the characteristic of axial spondyloarthritis, that doing it daily can often be effective in terms of reducing pain and improving mobility. When you take a stretch, you should take it to the point of discomfort. You shouldn't go past the point of pain, but it should be a little bit discomforting to ensure that you're actually stretching the muscle tissue. It should be a slow and prolonged stretch with no bouncing, and you need to hold it for at least 20 seconds and repeat 2 to 3 times per muscle group. And remember to breathe. Very often we'll hold our breath, but if you exhale and breathe through the stretch, you'll actually improve the quality of the stretch. Strengthening, again, we should be doing it about 2 to 3 times a week. We want to ensure the correct posture when you do it, and we want to ensure correct muscle activation. So what I mean by that is it's good to have somebody who understands exercise, whether it's a physiotherapist or an exercise instructor at a gym, to watch how you're doing your exercises, particularly if you're just starting out. Because technique is so important, because if you're not activating the right muscles, you're going to strengthen muscles that are already strong, and the weak muscles are going to stay weak. So that's really important to make sure that you're using correct muscle activation. You want to progress from remedial to advanced. So it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for muscles to start to change in terms of developing strength, and you get maximal strength in the muscle at 12 weeks. But at that 3 to 4 week mark, it's important that you continue to challenge the muscles and increase the weight that you're using. You should be doing about 10 to 15 repetitions and at least 1 set, if not more. You want to focus on the core muscles, so the abdominals and the back muscles working together to support the spine when you're functioning. And you want to focus on joint stability, particularly around the hips, the shoulders, and the knees. And I just wanted to end with a thought from a person living with axial spondyloarthritis. This is from some research that we conducted here on the the perceptions of physical activity in people with axial spondyloarthritis. And one person says that physical activity doesn't have a beginning or an end. It's something where consistency is key, because if you're not consistent with it, your symptoms just end up winning. So I'll just leave it there.